Okay, welcome to Mike's Gun World. Again, if you like the content, hit the like and subscribe button down below. Feel free to leave comments. Always happy to answer comments or questions, or if I make a mistake, I'm willing to learn. Today I want to talk about cold bluing. It's not as good as hot bluing or in humidity, but the cold bluing does work. It takes a while, it takes some patience. The gun has to be rust free, or the metal has to be rust free and degreased, and it usually does take several coats of the cold bluing. So it does take a while. It takes a little bit of patience. What I use is Birchwood Super Blue. You can get this just about anywhere. Midway USA sells this. I think Hornady sells it. You can find it all over the place. The gun we're going to be working on today is a Stevens 410 top break. This one is extremely old. I found it on gunbroker.com. Paid $100 for it. That's really about all these are worth. These top break 410s. Stevens made them. Savage made them. I think H&R made a version of them. They're pretty inexpensive. They're fun little guns if they're working correctly. Usually when you find them, the older models, they haven't been well taken care of. When you break them down, I've got a couple of these, and every time I take them apart, they're full of grease and rust and dirt and all kinds of gunk inside there. So you really have to strip it down. For lack of a better term, I'll call this the receiver. It does hold all the parts, the hammer, the mainspring, the trigger spring, and then the lever to actually break the barrel open. Why it's called a top break is because that lever actually breaks the top open, and when you do that, if you fire around, it ejects the shell. You put a new 3-inch 410 in there, and then you lock it down. Some of these lock down, some have some lock automatically. This is a much older version. I think this one comes somewhere around the turn of the century. They started building these in the late 1800s, and I don't know, probably the records and information on these, they're hard to find. Probably built them up into the 1950s. This one I have had completely torn down already. It's really old. The machining in here is terrible, and once I do get it apart, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But this receiver part, you can tell the stamped serial number. It is very old, so I'm dating it somewhere late 1800s, early 1900s, somewhere around there. It has, unfortunately, the guy that sold this on Gunbroker was not 100% honest, so sometimes you got to watch when you buy things out there. He did not say that the firing pin was broken, which is really unfortunate because this gun is fully functional. The barrel's decent, but you can see that the firing pin is broken. And because of the age of the gun, it's really hard to find a firing pin for this. I've been looking and looking and looking. Eventually I will find it. Normally the firing pin has a little screw on top here. The screw comes out and the firing pin just slides out the back, but this one has a pin. And that's another indicator to me that it's a very early version of the 410 top break. So I'm not going to really bore you with the whole takedown and everything else. But what I will tell you is, if you're going to take on a project like this, you need a good rust remover. I use Evapor Rust. It is biodegradable. It's reusable. They come in gallon containers. When I strip something down like this, I usually piss my wife off because I grab her Tupperware and then I put all the parts and pieces in the rust remover in there. So I now have my own buckets because I kept using her Tupperware to do that. So this gun is actually clean on the inside because it has been apart. I did attempt a bluing job on this And then I ran out of bluing, and I put the gun back together, and I put it away because I had a bunch of other projects that I was working on. And now it's time to actually do a video on how to cold blue. One other thing a couple other things I do want to show you is, as you can see on the receiver here, the bluing, it's possible it wasn't really as clean as it should have been, degreased as well. It took some of the bluing here, it didn't take it here. So we're going to strip all this today, and then we're going to try to redo this. The barrel itself was degreased, put it in the rust remover, and this has one coat of bluing on it. This turned out pretty well for the first coat. It usually takes 4 or 5 coats to get the bluing to look pretty good and protect the metal. So I'm kind of excited about the barrel. I think we get another coat or 2 on there, it's going to look good. The receiver to me is a challenge. And then when we are doing the cold bluing, once you put the bluing on, you wait about a minute, and then you have to dip the parts into cold water, which kind of locks the bluing into the metal. So that becomes a challenge with the barrel. And what I did was I took a piece of PVC, 2-inch PVC, and I glued a bottom on here. And what I can do is clamp this to my workbench leg, and if I need the rust remover, it doesn't take a lot of rust remover to fill up this 2-inch pipe, and then I could drop the barrel in there and let that sit overnight so we can clean the rust out of that. And then we clean that out, we flush it out, and when we have to do the actual cold bluing, we'll fill it back up with water, and then this way we can blue the entire barrel, put the bluing on the entire barrel, drop it right in here, pull it out, and we can put the barrel in cold water all at one time. So just a neat little trick that I came up with, and it seemed to work really well. So let me get this taken apart. I'm not going to bore you with what it takes to take this whole thing apart. Once I do get it apart, we'll start working on the cold bluing. Okay, so honestly, it took me all of about 10 minutes to get it broken down to this point. So I've got my trusty metal trays with all my parts, the mainspring, there's the mainspring, some of the trigger components, the spring and plunger for the breaker, and then I got a lot of in here already. I'm soaking some of the parts that we want to blue. That's in rust remover. They were greasy, and like I said, I did put it back together. I didn't get the bluing on good, so I soaked it in ballistol when I put it back together, so it definitely has a layer of lubrication on it, a little light grease. I use ballistol for everything, cleaning firearms. I'll do a video on how to clean a firearm with ballistol in the future, but everything's soaking in there. The rust remover helps degrease it. We do have a degreaser from Birchwood. It's a cleaner degreaser. I'll just use a sponge or a rag, and we'll get everything cleaned up with that. What I'm calling the receiver is now completely 100% broken down, and I think this is some of the machining that I was talking about. I mean, it's really rough. This is what makes me believe that this is a much older firearm dating back to the turn of the century. It does have serial numbers in here, pretty hard to see. 281 right there stamped, and then the barrel itself, they're matching numbers, so the barrel itself is also stamped 281. So this gun is matching. Whether it matters or not, it's not really going to increase the value. They go for $100 to $150 depending on the condition. The stock itself is in decent condition. I did ship the 4 stock, and that's what the blue painter's tape is holding that together. That needs to be epoxied when I'm ready to actually fix it. If I find a firing pin and I want to use this, shotgun, then I will definitely fix the stocks. But the next step for me is we've got to get the receiver into some rust remover and get it cleaned up and degreased. And then I'm going to degrease the barrel, and we're going to start bluing with the barrel. Well, this is all kind of we're getting some of the ballast all off of it. So there's some of my wife's Tupperware that I'm not allowed to use anymore, but I do have one piece left. So we're gonna pour the rust remover in here, just enough to cover the receiver. There we go. That's all you need. And again, it's reusable, so I can take it from there with a funnel, put it back into the container. We'll use these, I don't know. I'll use it for quite a while before I replace it. They're not very expensive, but it is fully reusable, so why not? So while everything's soaking over there for a little bit, I'm gonna start working on the barrel. We're gonna use a rag, soak the rag with some of the degreaser and get some of that ballast all off of here. There was definitely some overspray, so we don't want to have any grease on here when we're attempting to blue. This is overall pretty clean. Like I said, the first coat of bluing actually went on this very, very nicely. So just like that, maybe a little bit more. I can still feel a little ballast all up there. Try to rub it in real good and just make sure you get it all cleaned up. Dirt-free, grease-free, dust-free. I know my mat looks dirty. We do a lot of work on this mat. It's actually fairly clean. It's just got a lot of wear to it, is what it is. Okay, so that is what I would consider fully degreased. Wipe it down. Hopefully the grease from my hands aren't going on here. Maybe it's a good idea to put some gloves on. I'm kind of new to doing this. I've done it a few times. My other 410 turned out pretty nice. Okay, now here we go. Now this is a brand new bottle. And I got a screwdriver. Open that up. Okay, I'm going to use a sponge for this, just a little old sponge like that. We're going to get some of we're going to soak it in the bluing, pour a little bit into the sponge, soak it in, whoop, there we go. And we're going to just rub the entire barrel. You actually have to wait. They say wait about a minute once you get the bluing on. So I'm not going to bore you with that minute. I'll see you in 60 seconds. Okay, there's our 60 seconds. I'll be off camera for a second, but I am dropping it into the cold water. And all you do is drop it in and pull it right back out. Actually got a fairly nice finish for coat number 2. The barrel is starting to blue up fairly nicely. See, there's some of those marks you get. You got a little bit of grease on there. Might have been what happened with the receiver. But you can see it's getting there. Again, it's going to take a couple a couple of coats, so we're going to do it again. Get some bluing on the sponge, and then spread it along the whole barrel. Okay, now we're going to wait at 60 seconds again. Okay, 60 seconds is up. We're going to get it into the water. And it's really, really just dip it in the water and then wipe it down. We are getting a blue finish on here. It is a little bit mottled on this one side here. I guess what I'm going to do is try to take some degreaser on here before I do the next round. But you can see this side of the gun is turning, or this side of the barrel is turning out really nice. Again, not a perfect job. It's cold. You're never going to get a perfect job with cold bluing. You're going to get a decent job, not a perfect job. Get some water out of there. Yeah, no, she's empty. I'm going to run a little degreaser over the barrel again. See if maybe that helps a little bit. Because of that little bit of unevenness on this one side. It's on the right side of the barrel where it's a little bit uneven. There we go. Degrease that. And this time I'm going to try not to touch my, I'm not going to touch it with my fingers. I don't want to get any oil from my hands on here. So there's plenty of bluing left in the sponge. Put another coat on. Okay, that's coat number 4. See you in another minute. Okay, our minute's up. Back in the water. It's starting to look better. Definitely starting to look better. It's taking to some areas of the metal better than it is other areas of the metal. But, you know, honestly, at this point, this barrel is really just about re-blued. You're not going to get much better than what you're seeing right here. You know, we might want to go another coat or two. Again, you know, the age of this gun and the fact that I can't find a firing bin for it yet. I think it's in decent enough shape to say the barrel is done. So our next step, we're going to set this aside on a mat over here. Our next step is to get the parts that we have in the rust remover out, get them cleaned and dried, and then we're going to degrease those. So I will be back in a minute once I get those out and we get ready to start working on the receiver and see if we can actually get the receiver blued and looking better. Okay, so I've got all the parts that I want to blue: the receiver, the hammer, the trigger. I actually do want to do the screw heads, the top brake latch. This is from the 4-stock, so this is part of the latch for the 4-stock. That needs to be blued as well. Everything's cleaned. We do have to get down to degreasing, and then I have a nice clean mat over here where we're going to put the degreased parts, and I got a bucket of water. So when it comes to when it does come to actually bluing, we're going to use a wire hanger to hold the pieces so we don't get our greasy fingers on them. So degrease each of these parts. The top brake, I'm really not sure if this is machined or aluminum. I know that the trigger guard's aluminum, so I don't know that it's going to take any of the bluing. We'll give it a try. Just keep degreasing everything. Don't really want to touch them too much after I've degreased them. Okay, now we're going to save the receiver for last. We're going to start with these parts here first. Get the degreaser off. Okay, so my hanger. We're actually going to put the hanger through the pinhole of the hammer, and then whoops, and it slipped off. Then we're going to blue it, and we're going to dip it in the bucket. So I do have a brand new sponge for these parts and pieces. Put some of the bluing on there, and we'll get it on the hammer. Oh, we dropped it again. Gotta be careful because you're on the clock when you're doing this. Brushing the bluing on. Give it a nice good coat. Then we gotta wait a minute, and if this works, we'll do a couple parts at once, so we don't have to keep waiting too long and make this video too long. All right, we're back. We're gonna dip it in the water and pull it out. You can see that the bluing is actually holding on the hammer this time, and it is looking much better for its first coat. So you get the general idea of how to cold blue. I'm not going to bore you with doing each one of these parts and pieces. I'm going to turn the camera off for a while. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do all of these pieces and see if we can get the bluing to stick. And then I'll come back when I'm ready to actually do the receiver, and we'll go through the first round of bluing the receiver, see how that turns out, and then we'll stop the camera again and finish up the project. Okay, so we got through the hammer. Again, it's cold bluing. It's not going to turn out perfect, but we certainly have the metal protected. The selector for the top brake. I did do both of the bolt heads. They probably turned out about the best. The trigger looks decent, well protected, and then the 4-stock brake turned out pretty well too. So you know, for cold bluing, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. Now we're going to degrease the receiver, and this is the important one. We're going to try to get this looking quite a bit better than it did. So again, the same process. We're going to use a lot of degreaser on here. And we're going to try to blue all of these parts, everything that even goes under the stock, because the stock comes all the way, the stock comes all the way here. And then we're going to degrease on the inside. Okay. Now we're going to hang that for a second. We get some bluing on our sponge. And we're going to go a little bit heavier. We're going to go a little bit heavier on the sponge. And there's some that's dripping on this pad. We can soak up what we need when we need it. And really, you're just painting it on. Patiently, slowly painting it on. And I can already see it's going to have that kind of mottled look to it. This is going to be probably quite a few coats before we get this looking anywhere near decent. What I also found when I was doing the hammer and the trigger and some of the other pieces is I was not waiting the full minute for the bluing to set into the steel. And it seemed to have worked a little bit better when it was a little bit more quickly dipped in the water. And I'm seeing that same kind of result now, taking it out of the water. I think that the bluing is holding a little bit better than it was before. This is probably going to take 5 or 6, 7 coats, something like that. So I'm going to get back at it, and then as soon as I'm done, I will show you the finished product. Okay, so we're totally done at this point. You can see most of the parts, they turned out fairly decent. Again, cold bluing is not exactly the way you want to go if you want a professional finish, but this metal is protected. The bluing turned out okay. The receiver looks much better than it did when we started this project, and I'll tell you, it took almost 7 coats of bluing to get it to look even like this. I guess we could have gone a few more coats, but again, this gun really isn't worth it. It was more about really showing the process of cold bluing and what it could do for you. If you're looking for a professional finish, I would definitely bring it to a gunsmith or somebody who does bluing, gun bluing, hot bluing. They will make it look professional, but if you just want to do it in your garage, in your workshop, cold bluing is the way to go. So let me get this put back together, and then I'll show you the finished product. Okay, we got it all put back together, and it actually turned out a lot better than I thought. There's certainly some areas for improvement, but in general, I got to tell you, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Cold bluing. Stevens. 1900. 410 top break. Mike's Gun World. See you soon.